Welcome to Goddess on the Rise. I'm your host, Sarah Brooke Berg, board certified life coach, board certified holistic health coach, and Ayurveda practitioner. This podcast is all about self-love, wellness, and reclaiming the body you are in and creating a life where you can come out on top. So buckle up, girlfriend. We are going for a ride. Hello, and happy 2024. I can't believe I am saying this, but we are back with Goddess on the Rise, my podcast. Oh my gosh, it has been a long time coming. It's been a long time coming, but you and me, that's my whole world. Okay, sorry. Okay, here's the thing. I'm gonna apologize for my delay in podcasting. I realize you listening to my podcast, we got a thing going on and I left you hanging and I'm sorry for that. And I have a reason. I do have a reason, and it's pretty chaotic if I'm being honest. A lot has happened since we last talked in what was it, February, I believe it was, of 2023. First off, I want to tell you, if you are the type of person who likes to hear podcasts and see podcasts, then you need to go over to my YouTube channel, Sarah Brooke Berg Co., and you can watch me record this podcast, which I don't know, for me is such a vibe. I've always wanted to be able to talk to you on camera, and here I am doing it. And then I'm here in Audacity, which is the software that I use to record a podcast. So it's kind of cool. Anyways, I am so excited to finally be back in podcasting. And again, so much has changed in my life. And I want to get to that soon. I really, really do. But today's episode is going to be about my health journey. Now, if you have been listening to the podcast for any amount of time, you already know that I have had a whirlwind of health issues, right? And for the longest time, I took blame for this. It was I felt like I did something wrong, right? Well, since the last time we talked, a couple things have changed. Well, I should say a lot of things have changed. I have became a board certified holistic health coach. So I've learned a lot about the body, as if I didn't already know a whole bunch, right? But I learned so much more. And part of that looked like me just feeling very overwhelmed with my own health journey. So I hired out someone, which again, I've done this before, so it's not like it's anything new. The biggest difference is that the person that I hired this time, she had a program, much like what I had actually created as well. If you're not following me on social media, you might not know this, but I created a program called Plus and Peace, and I can get into that. I get to do a whole episode on that, but basically, she created this program where there is lab work involved and a lot of one-on-one calls. And for me, and plus it has a chat feature as well. And for me, that's what I needed. I needed someone to follow up with me. I needed to make sure that my care was in good hands, versus who I worked with before. It was just I booked the sessions whenever, and then we would follow up whenever my lab work came back. And then I was pretty much on my own the whole time. And that was just not a vibe for me. So this has been so mind opening for me. It's been really crazy. So I've done a lot of lab work with her, and I have told her a lot about my history with an eating disorder, and my history with primary care doctors, OBGYNs, endocrinologists. And the big story that I have always been told is that, hey, you're fat, you need to lose weight, and that will fix all your issues. And for me, that was so frustrating because I was like, that doesn't even make sense. You don't get endometriosis from being overweight. You don't have thyroid issues from being overweight. Correlation does not equal causation, people. Like, even with PCOS, you don't get PCOS from being overweight. These things happen in thin people all the time. And telling me just to lose weight was doing me such a big disservice, right? Because number one, all of these issues are like inflammatory issues. Like, endometriosis is an inflammatory disease. And so there's so much inflammation in my body, right? Thyroid issue, PCOS, those have to do with metabolic health. They play a huge role in your metabolism. They play a huge role in many different areas of your life. And so for them just to tell me to go lose weight and that's going to solve my problems is such a false narrative, and actually a very scary narrative that they are reinforcing instead of helping, right? Or the other thing would be like go on birth control or go on metformin. Granted, they wanted me to go on metformin. They never had even tested my sugars, never tested my blood sugars. And that's one of the big things when it comes to dealing with PCOS, right? Is like the blood sugar imbalance. And they never even tested that to find out if I had that issue. They just automatically wanted to put me on metformin before even seeing how my blood sugars were. And so as I started working with this functional medicine dietitian that I'm working with right now, she was like, you're literally the picture of health. All of your lab work is insanely amazing. Like, everything is just really like on point. Your blood sugars are so stable. A lot of my gut tests came back beautiful. And she's like, this right here tells me like your foundation of health is extremely strong. You've been doing all the work. You've been doing all the things, right? To really help yourself. Here's what's not working for you. Your gut, your thyroid. So there is this very thin layer of the gut membrane, and it's like as thin as a wet paper towel. And what happens is that there is this bacteria in this lining, and mine is so low, it's causing the lining to be so thin. And when that happens, and when you have a couple of the other markers that I have, what happens is like there's this huge inflammatory response because everything is essentially leaking out into the bloodstream. And what do we know about pollution? The solution to pollution is dilution. I think I'm really clever when I say that. I'm not gonna lie. I really love that saying, mostly because it just makes so much sense, right? So, what is happening is that my blood and my body is like, whoa, foreign bodies in the bloodstream. What the hell is this? And so they start pushing water, pushing water, pushing water. And that means swelling, inflammation, right? Because the body's like, get this out. This is not okay. This shouldn't be here. This is pollution. This is stuff that's supposed to be in the gut. But my gut membrane is so thin. It's just leaking right through it, right? And because of that, I also have SIBO, which is small intestinal bacteria overgrowth. And that usually happens because of the thinning of the membrane. So in that case, I have this level. It's called zonulin. It's super, super high. In fact, it's probably the highest she's ever seen, she said. And if you know anything about me, you know I like to be an overachiever. Oh gosh. And so my level is like just like through the charts high. And because of that, it just goes to show like how inflamed I really am. And with all that being said, on top of all of this, I am still struggling with my thyroid. My thyroid has been through the roof, my TSH, really meaning that I'm hypothyroid, so like very, very low. I know it's like the TSH is high, but it means an opposite effect on the thyroid. So that's that. And that's very difficult because it just creates more problems in the body. And then on top of that, you have, I'm just over here peeking at my dogs at the same time if you're watching the YouTube video. The girls had shots today. If you don't know, gosh, I have so much I need to update you on. If you don't know, I got a puppy. And if you're listening to the podcast and you're like, wait, I thought you had a dog, I'm going to need you to sit down because my dog died. And so if you need some emotional support, please let me know because I know she was a lot to a lot of people. And I'm just going to hold it together for a sec. But back to the regular scheduled programming here. Oh, golly. But where were we? Talking about the thyroid. So because the thyroid is a mess that creates more issues on my body, basically, long story short, I'm just a shit show. And I'm a shit show because everything is all connected, right? And one of the things that she said to me yesterday, she knows I've been kind of like having a lot of emotional issues here lately. And my nervous system is just so taxed out. And we can see that actually on my HTMA testing, which if you don't know this, I can do HTMA testing, which is hair tissue mineral analysis, and it paints this beautiful picture of what is going on with the blood sugar, what's going on with your thyroid, what's going on with your adrenal health, your hormones. It really tells me a lot about what is happening inside the body. And unlike blood labs, like lab work that you would get done, it just takes like a quick snapshot, whereas hair tissue mineral analysis is like this window into what's been going on in your body for the last 3 to 4 months. So that's why I really love that testing. But with that, all of that being said, I'm still having issues with bleeding a lot, which has been such a struggle. And then also a lot of issues with just dealing with endometriosis and PCOS and low iron, like scary low iron, like almost transfusion low iron, but we're trying to just raise it naturally. So basically all of this being said, I have to lower the inflammation in my gut. And I know I just told you like the most craziest stuff, like there was so much there, but that's what it all boils down to, right? It's like creating an environment that is so much less inflamed, so much safer for my body. And one of the interesting things that kind of came up for me yesterday was like, oh my gosh, so what you're telling me is that I'm not fat, I'm inflamed. And she's like, yes, that's exactly what I am telling you. And then my thought was like, oh man, I need to make a status about this, like a post about this. And then I was like, hold up, wait, what does that matter? Why do I need to let people know that I'm not fat, I'm inflamed? And I can tell you why. Because fat people are seen as inherently bad, right? They're seen as people that are gross, that just eat fast food, they're not healthy, that they are greedy because they overeat and they eat too much sweets, right? And it's ingrained into us that they're inherently bad. And as people, as good people, we want to be seen as inherently good. And me talking about that, like saying like, oh, I'm not fat, I'm inflamed, all it does is further the agenda that fat people are inherently bad, which is literally everything that I stand against, right? And there's like this automatic assumption about fat people. And I have such a hard time with that because as I've seen, whether I'm inflamed or whether I'm fat, it doesn't fucking matter, right? Like I am who I am and that does not matter. What you know about me based off what you see is not anybody's business, but keep that to yourself. But with working with a lot of fat people, a lot of plus size women, however you decide to use that word, fat has been okay. So we had a little bit of a change of scenery here. I had to pause on the recording and stop for a second. So I just went back and listen to everything that I had just talked about just to make sure I'm not repeating myself at all. And I know I left off talking about the word fat or what you identify as, like as plus size or as fat. And in the fat community or the plus size community, a lot of women have really found like this power that they're able to take back when they use the word fat. The word that's been used against them for so long to like demonize them and make them feel like they're bad or they're doing bad things because they're not quote unquote healthy, which again, like I said before, you cannot tell someone's health status based on the way they look. It's just, that's not how that works. There are so many people out there that are walking around that would look like the society or the Western medicine's norm of health when actually they are riddled with inflammation, riddled with disease and disease that's in their control. Like, I'm not even gonna go there. I don't want to point fingers or anything like that, but I'm just saying that you cannot see someone's health based off of the way they look. Period. And so that may be true for like a lot of thin people. Not a lot of people think that they um are quote unquote, they believe that they're healthy, whereas a fat person they believe is not healthy. And there's like this common misconception out there that because you eat a certain way and you work out a certain way and you do things a certain way, that you're automatically thin. And a lot of times that's not the case. I have so many friends that are my fat friends, and they are some of the most healthiest people I know. Their foundation of health is so beautiful. Like, what they do for themselves is so great. Their mindsets are great. Their nervous systems are like perfect. They are like truly like living life in a beautiful, healthy body. All of their lab work comes back very normal. And the reason why is because they are healthy. But everybody around them assumes that they're not. And I can get into that. I think I've done a whole episode about the BMI scale, but I want to stay true to today's topic, which is my health journey. And how this all started, me talking about the word fat and about fat people, was that I wanted to make this status that, hey, like, I'm actually not fat, I'm inflamed, which is true, but it doesn't matter, right? So, like, the whole point is that it doesn't matter. I'm not here to convince anybody that fat people aren't bad. Like, if that's the way that you think, then I really think you need to unpack your biases and leave it out the door and figure out why you think the way you think, right? Especially if you don't think the same thing about thin people. So that's me on my soapbox, and that's why I'm not going to post anything like that. But it's also a great reminder for me to keep myself in check as well. I've done the work, I've been doing this work for years, but every now and then I find my own bias coming out in ways that I thought it was healed. I thought I had moved past some of these things, but the problem is that society, family, people around you, everybody has an agenda, or everybody hears an agenda and automatically assumes it's true, so they start spewing the same thing, right? And you know what's really crazy about that is, if we think about it, it's truly, a lot of it can be generational trauma, right? We pass down from generation to generation to literally hate our bodies, right? We've watched our moms grow up hating their bodies and pulling out different things and just saying different things because they watched their moms do that. And the generation before that saw their moms do that, saw the diets, saw the magazines, right? Saw them idolize thin women. Um, yeah. Okay, I need to get back on topic now, but I'm definitely going to do more podcast about these types of topics. So I hope that's your vibe. And if, again, you feel a little triggered by it, then that's a really great time to turn inward and start some reflection over that. And if that's something that you're interested in doing, please reach out, because I would love to help you on that journey. But going back to originally what I had said, me finding out that I had this like systemic inflammation was literally insane. Okay, I'm gonna grab my water. Drink your water. Gotta stay hydrated. But yeah, I found out that I'm really inflamed because my gut lining's not like functioning properly. There's a lot of like bacteria issues that are super low because they're basically, my body's not able to handle fermentation in my gut. So what basically all of this means is that there is a protocol I have to do. And it's so I I don't want to say difficult because I don't want to use that in my you guys, every time I start talking a lot, I always yawn. I mean, you know this if you've been listening to the podcast for any amount of time. And I think it's just because my mouth gets so dry. So, excuse my yawn. But it is what it is. So, where was I? Oh, yeah, the protocol I have to do. It is insane. It's because my gut is so inflamed. And I would like to take a minute to say that before anybody blames like anything on me or has anything to say about that, I want to remind you that that happens. It happens because of antibiotic use. It happens because some kind of bacteria gets introduced into the stomach. And when you have inflammatory diseases like I do, oftentimes that can make it to where the body can't fight certain things off. There's so many reasons why this happens. It's not anybody's fault except maybe my doctor's fault for not checking it or catching on that something serious was going on, but that's another story for another day. But the protocol is going to be a special you guys know I hate the word diet, but it's basically a special guide of food that I have to follow that is where it doesn't ferment into my gut. So my gut's able to like digest it really easy. The problem with this, I'm open to it. I'm gonna give it a good go. I'm really gonna give it my all. The problem with this, I thought was that it was just gonna be gluten-free diet, but it is not. It is like a category of foods that I can have, and it is small. It is very restricted. And again, the reason is because my gut is not doing what it needs and it's leaking out into my bloodstream, which is causing so much inflammation, which is causing so much pain. And we know that when you have inflammation, that is like the perfect environment for disease to happen. So I really need to get off. I really need to get this off of me. I need to feel better. Um, it's just that guide is it's throwing me off a little. It's throwing me off a little. It is so restrictive. And I think back to that girl I was 5 or 6 years ago who was in the depths of her eating disorder. And I think that would be even restricted for her, very restrictive for her. And yeah, so I have a support system in line for me to kind of help me through that because that's very difficult. But it is truly one of the easiest ways and really much the only way to help my bowels and help my gut. So it's basically going on like gut rest, like bowel rest. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, except that it's not as intense as like the people that have to go on bowel rest and they can only have liquids. So there is that. I am going to have to be doing that for 2 to 3 weeks before I start the protocol to get rid of the SIBO in my gut, which is, I think I said it at the beginning, but it's small intestinal bacteria overgrowth. And that happens because that gut lining gets so inflamed that pretty much anything can kind of get in and out. So that protocol, I think, lasts 40 days. So I have 2 to 3 weeks of the nutrition guideline and then 40 days of the other protocol. So I'm going to be gluten-free for a very long time because one of my inflammation markers actually shows that I'm so inflamed from gluten. My body just can't handle it. It can't break down like the proteins in it, which is interesting because I've had issues with gluten before. And a lot of people, there's a lot of research out there with a correlation of endometriosis as well with, oh my gosh, I forgot what I was talking about. Endometriosis with, oh yeah, gluten. And then even some thyroid issues with gluten as well. They have some intolerances to that. So I And because I have so many like super bad gut issues, I have to remove it for a little bit. So this should be interesting. And I wanted to share it with you because number one, I want you to know like you're never, ever, ever alone on your health journey. I am always there and usually in the trenches with you, experiencing some of the same stuff. And I think that's why I'm so passionate about what it is that I do. And it just makes me even more passionate to help more plus size women because I guarantee you there's so many of us walking around feeling like absolute shit, and it's because we're not getting tested for the correct things, we're not getting taken seriously, and it's doing more harm than good. Like I have been untreated for years. I've had this been going on for a long time, and it just has not been treated properly or correctly or even addressed. And when I say things to my providers, it's just brushed off with as, oh, we'll see you in 2 months and see if it gets better. Try to address your stress. Why don't you lose weight? All these different things when that's not actually the case. That's not going to help anything. Not to mention how hard it is to lose weight when you are dealing with several different metabolism and inflammation diseases. Like, it's impossible for me to lose weight with my thyroid being as high as it is. It's literally impossible. So with all that being said, I had also posted on my stories that like I wanted to share. I was so excited to get these results back. But then once I got them back, I was so overwhelmed and it was a lot for me to kind of like just deal with and process. So because of that, I wanted a safe place to where I knew that people would come and watch this if they were actually interested in it. So that is why I wanted to share it here. And also on the podcast, in previous episodes, you guys have loved these health update episodes. You always reach out. You tell me kind of what's on your mind, what you've experienced as well. And I think it's just a great way for us to bond and build community. So with all that being said, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. I'm so happy to be back with the podcast. And this year coming up, I plan on to have a lot of guests on the podcast. So if you know someone who would be a good fit, feel free to reach out or send them my podcast. Let them know like, hey, I think you should message Sarah. I have a link on my Facebook right now. I'm probably going to put it in my link tree on Instagram just that way people have access to it. And it's where they can book a podcast interview with me, ask them some questions beforehand, and tells them a little bit about like what I'm all about here at Goddess on the Rise. So that way they can kind of know what they're getting themselves into and to see if I'm a good fit. So with that being said, I'm so freaking happy to be back. Let me know if you are listening. Tag me on social media. I want to see you. I want to see you listening to the podcast. And just a reminder, Goddess on the Rise is going to be talking about many different topics like lifestyle, health, wellness, all through an anti-diet culture lens, helping women feel empowered. We're going to talk about self-love, confidence, Ayurveda, nervous system support, and really any topic of the above that relates to that. And if there's something in particular you are wanting me to talk about, feel free to reach out and we can chat more about what that would look like. So I love you so much. Thank you for being here. I mean it. And I look forward to chatting more.